something. Yes, I am from the part of Scotland that's just northwest of Warsaw, but see, I told you. That's we'll leave that for some other geography lesson. Thank you for that really terrific introduction, particularly with the accent and the whole thing. I couldn't even possibly do it. It does give a new spin to that name of my company, GreenBiz Group. Thank you so much for being here, for lasting through the day. I was thinking, actually, at the end of this dinner thing, to your point, Jake, that there's an old story about, it goes back to ancient Rome in the time of the martyrs, when Emperor Nero, also at the end of a long day, was feeling particularly violent and vindictive and wanted to have a bloody spectacle to sort of shake things up. And so he summoned one of his proudest martyrs and most fierce lions into the arena and put them in there and waited to see what happened. What happened was that the martyr walked up to the lion and whispered something in its ear, and the lion walked away and went to sleep. And Nero was furious and wanted to know what the martyr said to the lion. Martyr simply said, I told him that if you eat the meal, you have to stay for the speech. So I hope you enjoyed your pie. It's really an honor to be here. Thank you, Kate, for inviting Puck and I. I'm really just the warm-up for Puck. Sorry I didn't get to introduce him, but there is a great story here. And thank you for being here, but thank you for what you do. I mean, you probably don't hear that enough, and it truly is God's work. And I know Puck will reflect this too when he's up here, are in awe of what you do day in and day out, year in and year out. It really is such a gift and such a service that it's hard to really thank you enough. For the last 25 or so years, I've had the incredible good fortune to be at the center of a lot of activity around business and sustainability, and how the private sector has been stepping up in really terrific ways in integrating environmental thinking into their operations and doing it in a way that aligns with core strategy and core business activities and core value propositions. It's not simply about doing the right thing. It really is one of the untold stories, certainly by the mainstream media, about what's going on in the private sector. Some of the world's biggest companies and many local, small, innovative companies, mom and pop shops, are really stepping up in significant ways. Not just doing less bad in many cases, but not just being more efficient, but actually being innovative in terms of how they do what they do, even the business models that they're in. And we hear about some of this, that we've heard about the sharing economy and the collaborative economy, some of the things that we've been talking about, and we see it every day in our communities, and it's really been very exciting to be in the center of this, as a journalist and as a convener of companies and bringing these things together. What's really extraordinary about it is that companies are making big, bold, audacious goals around zero waste, 100% renewably powered, creating closed-loop factories, water-neutral and energy-positive buildings. Some of these, certainly not everybody, but it's a lot more than we see. It's a lot more than you'll ever read about in the mainstream media. It's what gives me excitement every day to get out of bed and see what's going on and to watch and bring these companies together to learn from one another. There's only one problem. It's not really making a difference. It's not really moving the needle when you look at the indicators in our planet in terms of water, clean air, clean water, all the things that you work for. Clean air, clean water, access to healthy food, the ability to, for all of us to lead the healthy, bountiful lives that we want to lead and to pass it on to our kids and grandkids. And there's a number of reasons for that, but I want to talk about two. First of all, a lot of this is about change, and change is hard. It's hard for individuals, it's hard for families, it's hard for communities, it's hard for governments, it's hard for cities. It's just hard. I mean, when it comes to change, people tend to love the noun and hate the verb, right? Probably a lot of you ran on the noun, right? We need a change, it's time for a change, I'm here for a change, whatever the change is, but getting stuff done is really hard. And companies fight, swim upstream, even companies that have bold, audacious visions and plans, and are sometimes trying against what society wants, what shareholders want, what the regulations allow to make some of these kinds of changes. So change is hard, but beyond that is a failure of leadership and vision. It's really about vision. And one of the things that's struck me so much as I've looked at this for so long is that we have not had many leaders, business leaders, cultural leaders, political leaders at the local, state, national level, who can tell a compelling story about what happens if we get things right. I mean, think about that for a minute. We know what happens if we get things wrong. Thank you, Al Gore. Thank you, Bill McKibben. I mean, thank you, Bill McKibben and Al Gore and the likes who've been telling these stories of what failure looks like. But we haven't had a vision, a positive vision of success, of what happens in terms of the things that we all know we want: clean air, clean water, food security, energy security, water security, housing security, the ability to get around, mobility, as we were talking about earlier, at every layer of the economic spectrum. And that's a huge opportunity. So it was really quite exciting for me a couple years ago to meet this former Marine Colonel named Mark Puck Mykleby. He's called Puck, by the way, because he's just an amazing Shakespearean actor. I'm kidding. He grew up in Minnesota and plays hockey. Just try that out. And the story that, and Puck will tell you a deeper version of this, but I think just as a setup of what this is about and why we're here, is goes back. I think it's fascinating. So in 2009. Admiral Mike Mullen, who was the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, summoned Puck and a Navy captain called Wayne Porter to the Pentagon and asked them to develop a strategic narrative for America. Not a military narrative, but a narrative for the country. You have to understand, Admiral Mullen was a graduate first of the Naval postgraduate school in Monterey, but he was also a graduate of Harvard Business School, Management Academy, and he had some serious chops in terms of strategy. And he had gone through, he'd been the chief of naval operations, which means he was part of the Joint Chiefs of Staff in 2007. President George W. Bush appointed him to the Joint Chiefs of Staff. President Obama reappointed him in 2009. And it was about 6 months into Obama's term that Puck and Captain Porter were brought in, because Admiral Mullen realized that he wanted to know where the country was going. He wanted to know, in effect, what we were fighting for. So Puck and I are working on a book, and along with our author, Patrick Doherty, and we had cause a couple weeks ago to interview Admiral Mullen. And we asked a question that Puck had never asked before, which is, what were you thinking? Why did you do this? Why did you want this national strategy? And I'm going to read you just a brief quotes of what he actually told us. He said, I caught the Bush administration during the last 15 months, and they were beat to death. Iraq wasn't going well. And obviously I wanted to know what Obama was going to do as he came in. So what's the strategic approach? So I had this constant need for strategy and the inability to get interest from anyone, quite frankly, right up to the White House to get that strategy. He said I wanted to know how I, the chairman of the Joint Chiefs, fit in. I've got significant leadership responsibilities and I need to know where to go. I need something for the country. He said, now, this is him saying this, those are not words that come out of the chairman of the Joint Chief of Staff's mouth, because that's what the president's supposed to do. But clearly we didn't have it, so I just put Puck and Wayne to work and said, first of all, this has to be different. This has to be something that's never been done before. And second of all, it has to be bigger than just the military. And ultimately, it was about the economy. He said, I believe that if you have 5 or 6 of the world's economic engines all thriving, he named Brazil, China, US, Europe, Middle East, India, Japan, Korea. So if you can make those engines thrive, that solves everybody's problem. So Puck and Wayne Porter came up with this strategic narrative. It was ultimately published by the Wilson Center, thanks to our former Congresswoman Jane Harman, who had gone over to around the Wilson Center. And it came out as a report in 2011. And it caught a wave, at least in a policy crowd. And because these two, this Navy captain and this Marine colonel, had come up with a vision for America that used America's economic engine to do the heavy lifting, but put sustainability in the center. You'll hear him talk about it in a couple minutes. 3 big pillars: walkable community, something we've been talking about here; regenerative ag, interesting as that's a pillar; and resource productivity, massive resource productivity. How does that get America to this place of security and economic security, security of every kind? And ultimately, it's about resilience. Resilience is the ability, basically, to withstand shocks of any kind: economic, political, terrorism, climate, disease. And as you'll hear the Puck describe this vision, it's really quite exciting. So I came to this just a couple of years ago when Puck and I met on stage at an event that we produced, invited Puck, and we had this great conversation. And I realized, finally, someone is telling the story of what happens if we get things right. This is an extraordinary thing. This is the story of what happens when we get things right that puts sustainability at the center. Did I mention this came out of the Pentagon? So I'm going to let Puck take it from here, and then he and I are going to have a conversation and then bring you all into this, because I think this is very much a conversation about local government at its core. So without further ado, let's do what we always do when we're in a tough bind. Let's send in the Marine. Puck.
Guess we're using this thing. Normally, if I get too loud, sorry, I'll drop the mic. You just let me know. But thanks.
You want me to do the slides?
Huh? Oh wait, yeah, I'll grab it. Thanks. Mind. Does that thing go up there?
Yeah, I'll take it.
All right. But anyway, before we get into this stuff, are the kids still here? The little ones? Thank you, because my wife always tells me don't drop the F-bomb in front of the crowd, it's going to happen. Something. So I'm just telling you right now, I'm working on my life, but still, the Marine Corps is a tough thing to shake off, so sometimes you just get amped up and it comes out, so thanks. I was getting all sweaty when I saw him running around, it was good. Well, I really wanted to hear, but I didn't want to have potty mouth in front of me. Anyway, but hey, I just got to jump off what Joel said. America's been great. My time in the Marine Corps, people have always gone out of their way to say thanks for serving. I'm not going to miss this opportunity, particularly in this crowd, to say thank you for your service. I think it's a hell of a lot easier to get shot at than to go and stand in front of the I know I'm flipping about it, and I'm not pandering. I guess maybe I am. Who cares? But I mean, really, the depths of my heart is thanks for the public service. And this is the type of public service you're doing is where the meat meets the metal. Because you guys actually have to produce. Folks in D.C., and I'm not a D.C. I had the misfortune of being there for 2 years, but they don't have to produce. They get to hide. You don't get to hide. That takes guts. That takes dedication. That takes grit. And so I just wanted to say thanks. I didn't want to leave here. If you remember anything, please remember my thanks, because I mean it. So, without further ado, Joel teed it up. And by the way, you guys already get it. All right, so I had to give kind of the same speech. I'm from Minnesota, but the Marine Corps brought us to South Carolina, so I still live in Beaufort, South Carolina. But I actually gave a speech down in Hilton Head. Very red county, very red state, very red everything. Great people, love them. But you can't use the word sustainability down there. You just can't. It's like dropping the F-bomb in church. You can't say it. So when I'm down there, I don't use the word sustainability. I use the word kumquat because kumquat's the cute word, and nobody choose kumquat. And they finally get it. But I would say you guys get it. A little bit different situation there. So I hope I'm talking to a friendly crowd here. So, all right. So yeah, grand strategy, sustainability, all those things going in. And Joel teed it up well. Yeah, no kidding. Sustainability raises to that level. All right. So the first thing I'm going to challenge you to do is think big, because that's what we're going to do. We're going to think big. But I'm hoping that I can show you that what you guys do every day, the things that you're trying to do with policy, engaging citizenry, it's grand strategy. And if you had to have a corollary to that thing, in World War II, there was a reason why people had victory gardens in their backyard, because they had a visceral connection to what was going on over there, recognizing that what they do here has impact over there. And if you don't think sustainability fits in that realm, well then we're going to have a long, long conversation, maybe over beer. Right? Because I'm here to tell you what you do and your perspective and how you bring it. I was going to say to the fight, well I guess it is a fight. It's important. And it's important to this nation because first of all, I just got to start off with one of my more favorite quotes from Thomas Paine. Right? Wrote that little pamphlet, Common Sense, 1776. If there's any time where we need a part two, it's probably now. Common Sense, the sequel. Right? But this is a great quote, right on the very first page. Right on the very first page. The cause of America is in a great measure the cause of all mankind. Let's let that sink in for a second. The cause of America is in a great measure the cause of all mankind. Well, in 1776, Tom was talking about self-determination. Just that fundamental, inalienable right of a human being to be able to say, this is how I want to be governed, God damn it, I want to be part of it. That was a pretty unique proposition back in 1776. We had some folks put some serious skin in the game to make that happen. Right? Well, you guys are all in public service. I guess I was in public service. I did headbutting in the public service overseas. And after over a quarter of a century of doing that, I have to ask a question. What is our cause in America today? Stick up your paw if you can answer the question. Because I can. Now, I'm not going to, first of all, I'm not going to apologize for America. I'm sure as hell not going to apologize for America, but I'm not going to make any freaking excuses either. Right now, we are the source of status quo in the world. We are getting in the way across the board because we don't want shit to change. Guess what? Losing proposition. Because the only thing that subscribes in any type of ecology, any place in the world, that subscribes to the logic of status quo, it's a monoculture. We know monocultures wither and die. Is that what we want to become? Is that what we want to be? That's why we got to start talking about this notion of grand strategy. When I'm talking about grand strategy, I'm not talking about national security strategy. I'm not talking about the gazillion strategies that come out of every corner of Washington, D.C. Trust me, we got plenty of strategies. I mean, we do. We've got a national security strategy. We've got a national defense strategy. We have a national military strategy. We have a national health security strategy. We have 3 core documents for national bike safety that are our national bike safety strategy. Holy shit, that's really neat, right? The problem is that we have so many strategies, we don't have a strategy. We don't have a big arrow that points us in a direction that we need to be in the 21st century. And that, Joel teed it up quite nicely, I think, is why Admiral Mullen, I was blissfully happy doing strategy for special operations, and Wayne was already a made man in the Mullen family. He'd been on staff for I don't know how many years. For whatever reason, he ran the 2 of us together, sat us down and said, boys, go figure out a grand strategy for the nation. That was pretty much it. And he just said, go off and do it. So he wrapped bubble wrap around our heads so he'd protect us and kind of shielded us from everybody that didn't want us doing what we were going to be doing. Gave us the time, gave us the space, and he said, just go figure it out. Right? Well, I don't know what he wanted us to do, but this is what we gave him. It's a thing called the National Strategic Narrative. And the way Wayne and I approach this thing, again, we said we are not going to write a strategy. Simply because, again, there's so many strategies that come out of Washington, D.C. that they're irrelevant. And oh, by the way, the strategies that do come out, they're not really strategies. They're just, Pollyanna wish lists. I always call them, they're a string of platitudes wrapped up in a big-ass paradigm. I mean, they're not strategies. They don't make resourcing decisions. They don't make prioritization decisions. They don't actually do anything. Right? People read the executive summaries and then they write an article or they blog about it, and goody gumdrops when nothing friggin' happens. Right? The machine keeps going. So Wayne and I said we were not going to be part of that. What we were going to do is we were going to write this story, a national strategic narrative. And we're going to put it in a voice that matters. And for me, what mattered is Mom and Dad Mykleby in Wayzata, Minnesota. If my mom and dad could get it, lower middle class, socially moderate, fiscally conservative, regular American people, if they can get it, now we're onto something. Because now we're connected to the DNA of what makes an American, particularly in the 21st century. So what do we say in this thing? Well, first of all, Wayne and I, we just try to at least look at the world with a little bit of emotional and intellectual honesty and just call it the way it is. That if you look at any given functional sector, any trend line that we look at, whether it's our education system, whether it's our fiscal condition, whether it's our physical condition, whether it's our environmental condition, we're not trending in a positive way. That's not just saying, bury our heads in the sand, woe is me. There's no hope. I'm here to tell you there's plenty of hope. More importantly, there's plenty of opportunity. And that was the key thing that Wayne and I said. We are not going to focus on threat and risk. We got plenty of that. Right now, America, we've turned into the land of threat and risk, and we're supposed to be the stinking land of opportunity. So why do we not have a strategy that's focused on opportunity? Opportunity. A better way forward, not only just for us in the United States, but a better way forward in the world. And we knew we were not going to be able to get to that new place as long as we keep subscribing to an old operating system that was born in the Cold War. Talking about containment. Today we still are organizationally and cognitively wedded to this notion of containment, that we're going to leverage force and power to create some kind of deterministic result in the world. As if it's this little sandbox that we can play in. We're playing Stratego and everyone else is playing some other different game. Right? We said we're not going to do that. We're not going to subscribe to that narrative because guess what's happening? If we're looking at what Wayne and I call our enduring national interests, our prosperity and security, right now that old system is framed out in such a way that, guess what? We're expending our prosperity in pursuit of security, which is mostly defined by our 20th century past, not our 21st century reality. That sucks. That doesn't work. It doesn't work for my kid, it doesn't work for your kids, it doesn't work for your grandkids. Doesn't work here and now. So what Wayne and I said, well, what would that other system be? How do we have to view the world? Well, we can't view the world anymore like it's a closed system that we can play with discrete variables to get to a deterministic end. We needed to start viewing the world as an open system, an ecology, if you will. We even started calling it strategic ecology. That was subject to the rules of evolution, that we as a nation need to evolve. That doesn't mean that we have to lose what spiritually, intellectually, morally, it makes the fiber of this nation, but we do have to evolve because the world changes. We have to adapt to the world as it is, not the way we want it to be. Otherwise we lose our sense of self. And in that open systems approach, when we started looking at how are you going to pursue your enduring interests of prosperity and security in an open system, a strategic ecology, one word kept coming up, and it was that S word, that sustainability word. We said that sustainability, in this document, sustainability needs to become our national strategic imperative if we're going to make it, not only as a republic, but as a human species. And that only the United States has the capacity to lead in that way. And in that way, I mean in an opportunities way. Not in this weirdo, manic, masochistically nostalgic view towards the past, but a positive, constructive view towards the future. That's America's role in the world. And it's not just frickin' fluff. It's the real stuff. And why does sustainability subscribe, or fit within the realm of grand strategy, this mystical crap that people talk about in academia, that people don't believe we can do in Washington, D.C.? It subscribes to grand strategy, sustainability, because of its definition. Its ecological definition relates directly to our enduring interests of prosperity and security. I got to tell you, sustainability is just not a green thing. Unless you count green. But I mean, it's just not a green thing. Get over it. Stop talking about it if it's only a green thing. Because if you say it's only a green thing, guess what? You cut off 50% of the population from even listening to you anymore. Our language is our limit. You got to start talking in functional terms. All right? Sustainability as an organizing logic fits prosperity and security because its ecological definition, its scientific definition, is an organism's ability to remain diverse and productive over time. Diversity, depth, resilience, redundant systems. You know, Joel used a pretty kind of savvy way to say it. In a marine parlance, resilience is nothing more than our ability to take a gut punch and come back swinging. That's what our nation needs to do, because I don't want to pop anybody's bubble, but we're going to get hit again. We're going to scuff our knees. We're going to get our hair mussed up. And I don't give a shit if it comes from Al-Qaeda, ISIS, a hurricane, where I live, a tornado, a drought. You better toughen up. You better have the capacity to take that gut punch. All right? Because we can't drop to our knees. Toughen up. That's what we're talking about. And that's national security 21st century style. It's about the functioning systems that make our society today. Food, water, energy, built environment. How do they come together to make that resilient system? And I'm just talking about the national level. I'm talking about at Main Street, USA. Right? Now the other part of that definition, sustainability. The organism's ability to remain diverse and productive. Productivity. We're talking about growth. But we've got to shed this idea that growth is only measured in quantitative terms. We've got to start viewing growth in a qualitative sense. Right? Because it's not lost on me that this quantitative approach isn't working either. Considering that we're using 1.5 planets worth of resources just to support the human species. And if everyone consumed like Americans, guess what? It'd take 4.5 planets. And guess which way the world's going? Right? Consider China, India, Brazil, Russia. These are the big, heady issues of our age. And that's what makes sustainability so important. Because if America does that right, if we start taking it away from just kind of a big arm wave and put it into real frameworks, now domestic and foreign policy can come together. Right? Now our smart growth at home becomes our smart power abroad, and we start engaging the rest of the world from a positive opportunities, converging interest approach, rather than this weirdo conflicting interest approach. Case in point, how is China going to put 250 million people in the urban environment over the next 25 years? Don't you think it's kind of in our interest to help them do that? Now, I was a fighter pilot. I flew off aircraft carriers. I could really give a rat's ass that they have an aircraft carrier. Guess what? Bring it on. I'm not that worried about it. We got plenty. All right? That cannot be our focal point. Our focal point is making China a success. And that's what makes sustainability so powerful. It allows us to create that win-win environment that we all strive and thrive, and not just survive. And, oh, by the way, and just so we know that there is a little bit of historical reference to this notion of grand strategy and sustainability. Not only does sustainability map to our enduring interests of prosperity and security, it also is completely aligned with a quintessentially unique American way of doing grand strategy. So we rest on our economy, like Joel said, it allows our economy to do the heavy lifting. And then we align our governing institutions and our foreign policy to take on the great big global challenge of the age. Now that's the tagline. Right? So what are we talking about? World War II, we were the arsenal of democracy. Right? We armed and equipped our allies. We built up our own armed forces from 440,000 up to about a 10 million man juggernaut. We went overseas, we fought a two-front war, and then we came home. Against global fascism. Cold War, same process. We set up Kennan came up with his idea of containment, George Kennan, back in 1946. Contain the Soviet Union, take on global communism. But it was just a contest of economic and political systems. Kind of got militarized a little bit, you know, but everything, all that kind of stuff. Don't worry about it. It was all based on the economy. That was grand strategy 101. And guess what? Sustainability fits into that too if you consider that the great global challenge of our age is global unsustainability. I know that's not a word, but I'm a Marine. Global unsustainability. And the hard part about it for Americans is because you can't point at a map.
You can't say that's where we're going to go abroad and kick people's ass. But we've got to come to grips with the idea that the problems of the world don't start from our shores and go outward. It's about, do our systems that constitute our society today, do they integrate together in a holistic fashion? And do they connect in a positive, reinforcing, synergistic way with what's going on with the rest of the world? That's what grand strategy is all about. And when you start really considering, just get down to the wonky kind of stuff, this thing of global unsustainability, it has this nature of being the big, wicked problem of our age. And it has 4 discrete components. The problem with it is you can't disassemble these components. I'll talk about them in a second. They are all fused together. If you're going to take care of this problem of unsustainability, you're going to have to take the problem set on as a whole. Again, sustainability is that powerful tool. So what are we talking about, global unsustainability? 4 big components that we've really got to address as a nation and as a human species. Number 1, economic inclusion. And everyone gets a sweaty lip that by 2050, we're going to have 9 billion people in the world. Okay? That's not the number that scares me. The number that scares me is that we've got a full 3 billion people in the global middle class. And when they arrive, they have a 300% increase in resource consumption. 300%. That's where we get to that 4.5 planets worth of resources. Scary, scary number. Right? Which leads us to the second pillar of this issue of global unsustainability is ecosystem depletion. We've already exceeded boundaries. Right? We cannot support the human species given our current rate of consumption. It's just math. It's science. It's freaking common sense. It's like we're a mosquito that hit a vein and we just don't know when to pull out. Right? We're getting fat. We've got to figure out a different way forward. And that different way forward is not going to be using the same system, which leads us to point number 3, or issue number 3 in this. Is that if you think we're in a recession, take the pop your bubble, but we're not. We're actually in a contained depression. Right? Through 2008 was just as big of a deleveraging moment in our history as what 1929 was. Right? We've got to come to grips with that. Because right now, everyone freaks out every time Yellen says, we're going to stop, buying up stuff, and interest rates are going to, guess what? The economy is going to go in the toilet. You can't do that. The markets fluctuate. It's because we recognize that right now we're propping up our economy with monetary and fiscal policy just to maintain stock prices, money markets, et cetera, et cetera. That's the reality. We've got to look that reality straight in the face and come up with a different system, because the current system, which leads us to pillar number 4, has a complete resilience deficit. It is subject to capture, disruption, shock. And just to give you a sense of what that means, we're hyper-efficient. Goody gumdrops are hyper-efficient. But we have no capacity to take any of the shocks that are coming our way, whether they come from climate, whether they come from Al-Qaeda. I don't care. We don't have the capacity. Just to kind of give you a sense, remember Fukushima Daiichi? Tsunami hits, horrible nuclear disaster. Well, just to the north of where the typhoon hit, there was a small little factory that cranked out a $3 gasket for cars. $3 gasket. Right? And guess what? 30 days later, that little factory could not crank out those gaskets anymore. So guess what? 30 days later after that, supply chains start drying up. And our 4 major auto industries in the United States could not meet production. And guess what happened? Our national unemployment rate jumped from 8.9 to 9.1%. Now, you have to be hard-pressed to show direct causation, but sure as hell a strong correlation. That's how narrow our margins are. That is not an economy that's worth standing on. It's time to design anew. And here is the cool thing. With all that kind of wonky crap, we actually have a framework for doing grand strategy in the United States, where we've identified and commit ourselves to taking on that global challenge. And the next step is, down there at the bottom, is getting on with the economic engine. And I'm not going to go through all this other stuff, but then we have the grist for the mill to start developing a proper foreign policy that addresses these issues. And then also start framing out the institutions that we need. And damn it, I got to stomp my foot on this one. The fact that the United States is standing in the way of the Asian Infrastructure Investment Bank, just because it, for whatever reason, because they can deliver money in less time than the World Bank? Are you shitting me? We're better than that. We have got to come to grips with, we have to design anew. We have to design anew. But I don't want to get off on that, because that's just the most recent thing that pisses me off. But this economic engine thing
thing is really pretty cool, and this is the opportunity's way out. We have a way, if you could strap on your sustainability goggles for a moment and look at it through a prism of sustainability as an economic organizing logic, we can see deep, huge pools of pent-up demand that we can ram all this excess liquidity that's sitting on the sidelines, corporate cash in the form of all the money that they have, money markets, etc. We can ram them to these deep pools of demand and reinvigorate, re-empower our economy. And oh, by the way, start taking care of these nasty little things like stranded assets, the $20 trillion of hydrocarbons we can't burn and stay within planetary boundaries. Labor force. Yes, there are jobs out there if we just design our economy anew. Infrastructure. Yes, we can redesign our infrastructure if we stop wasting our money throwing it into sprawl. And this is the cool thing. It's a historic, huge opportunity. And I gotta anchor down on this, so bear with me. Man, this is cool stuff. All right? I don't know if you're gonna find it cool, but as a Marine, this is all novel to me, so I think it's cool. I'm kind of like that RCA dog, you know? When I see this stuff, I'm just mesmerized. Walkable communities, yeah, walkable communities. You know, mixed, we had it before. You know, mixed use, mixed income, service rich, transit oriented, walkable communities that you guys all know so well. Guess what? That's the housing market can be our salvation at a national scale. According to the National Association of Realtors, 60% of Americans don't like where they live. Anybody heard these numbers yet? 60% of Americans more specifically seek the attributes of smart growth, walkable communities in their next housing purchase. Say it isn't so, it is. And oh, by the way, only 2% of new housing startups will map to that demand. Now, call me crazy, you know, I don't do math very well, so this is going to be in public, but if you have 60% demand and 2% supply, what is that? It's a big freaking opportunity, that's what that is. Right? And so why is it? If you have to start anywhere with strategy, you have to look at demographics. And right now, the demographic flow, we already talked about it earlier today. The demographic convergence that we see in this country is powerful from a market force standpoint. Because the biggest chunks of our population are the baby boomers and the millennials. And guess what? They're meeting in the marketplace seeking the same attributes in their next housing purchase. The baby boomers are downsizing, you know? They don't want to be stuck out in the suburbs. You know, kids take away their keys, they get thrown somewhere, somebody shovels applesauce in their mouth, they don't know what the hell's going on. They need to be in a place where they can be engaged, part of the culture, part of what's going on, and we want them there. They're a resource to be leveraged. At the same time, millennials, now I don't know, who was the millennial? Who raised their hand? I don't know what the hell you guys watch for TV. You know, when I was a kid growing up in the suburbs of Minneapolis, you would watch Brady Bunch, that made sense where I lived. I was like, geez, I guess the Brady's do it, this is good for the Myklebys too. I guess you go, what do you guys watch, Friends? What'd you watch? I don't know, whatever the hell to watch. Anyways, you know, go to the kid, they want to go live in a place that's hip, it's happening, it's cool. You know, they're Seinfeld. What? I don't know, whatever. Just work with me. You guys watch Friends. I want to go to the city work. Leave me alone. All right? So the bottom line on all that is they're seeking those attributes of smart growth in their housing purchase. All right? They don't want to build about in the suburbs either. And just to give you kind of a data point on that one, Hilton Head again. A dying economic model. Double gated communities, lots of golf courses. You know, again, goody gumdrops, and that's a technical term. You guys can use it too. Goody gumdrops. The economic model is not working. Property values dropping, ain't working. It's time to have something new. And just to put it in historic reference, you know, when the returning GIs came back from World War II, and that's kind of fueled with sprawl, with cheap housing, this level of demand that we're talking about with the millennials and the baby boomers converging in the marketplace is 3 times that level of housing demand. 3 times. And remember, the GIs coming home, they fueled our economy in the form of housing purchases all the way up to the late 70s, early 80s, before the wheels started flying off the wheel, or flying off the cart on the sprawl cart. It's huge, it's historic, it's time to tap into it. Number 2, regenerative agriculture, and it's just not for hippies anymore. Right? This is a huge, huge thing. Now, just from a national security perspective, and the fact that I'm a Minnesota boy, you got to be concerned, number 1, about soil erosion. It's a huge issue. Right now, according to the University of Michigan, there's swaths of the breadbasket of America where 75% of the soil has been eroded. Topsoil. 75%. Now, that's not the average, that's the worst. But it is kind of scary that 50% of Iowa's topsoil is gone, and that's an average. That sucks. That's scary. At what time do we hit systemic collapse where we can no longer produce food for our population? If you want to know what that looks like, go talk to Saudi Arabia. 15, 20 years ago, they were food self-sufficient. Now they're completely in-self-sufficient. Is that a word? You guys got it, right? All right. Saudi Arabia, take a look at it. That's why they're buying up swaths of Ethiopia. Because they have to import their food. That's what soil, not tending to your soils, does for you. All right? But here's the cool stuff about this. And I don't even start talking about water because you guys already know about water, so I'm not even going to go there. But the opportunity around regenerative agriculture, not only because of the issue around soils, we have to be able to rebuild our soils, we have to be able to sequester carbon, all those good stuff that come out of it, but here's the economic logic. According to the OECD, by 2050 we have to increase global food production by 60%, and 100% of that has to be regenerative, simply because of ecosystem limitations. And this is where the Machiavellian nature and maybe the marineness in me comes out. We can do this at a time, we can make this shift at a time when food prices are at an all-time high. It makes economic sense to do it. And, oh, by the way, to take it down to Main Street Farmer USA is per acre, according to Rodale 30-year farm trial. Have any of you guys read that yet? Great piece of gear. 30-year farm trial, basically comparing what we consider industrial ag versus regenerative agricultural practices. Per acre equivalent yields. In times of drought, 30% greater yields using regenerative ag, and most importantly, 3 times more profitable per acre using regenerative ag when you consider externalities. Not to mention 45% less carbon emissions, 40% less energy usage, and water, less water usage. Huge opportunity to feed the world and lead a different direction in a farming, from a farming perspective. Huge business opportunity. And, oh, by the way, just the demographics of farmers, our average age of our farmers is 59. Our farming population is aging out. We have got to get a whole new cadre of young folks into the farming business. And it's just not digging in the dirt. It is, and it's nice. We used to have a family farm myself. Love it. But it's also high science. So take a look at what Wes Jackson is doing out of the Land Institute out of Kansas. This is high science, being able to develop the proper types of technologies to do regenerative agriculture. The last thing, productivity revolution. We have fundamentally got to reduce our resource intensity per unit of GDP. It's that simple. By a factor of 10, if we're going to make it. And this is what's so freaking cool. If we want to be able to deliver the goods and services to meet that new burgeoning global middle class of 3 billion consumers, we already have the technologies in the form of stereolithography, 3D printing, advanced materials, as well as in providing the power in renewable energy to be able to do this. If we invest at that scale, the same scale that we invested into the auto industry to transition it to be a war engine in 1940. Thanks to a guy named Big Bill Knudsen that came out of Chevrolet. It didn't happen by the government, it happened from the private sector. We have the capacity to do this right now. And not to just keep it up at the big arm wave. Those 3 big bins of demand translate right down to Main Street in a pretty compelling way. If you can, I know this is the frickin' eye chart on the bottom, but this comes out of a report from the president about advanced manufacturing, and it came out in 2012. But bottom line is, for every buck that you would put into any one of these sectors, whether it's retail all the way up to transportation, manufacturing, the vertical graph is what your ancillary bang for the buck is. So, you put a buck in, you get X amount of dollars out in terms of ancillary economic activity. Well, right now, our economy is pointed overtly at this end. Retail trade, retail consumerism up to basically financial services. That way, every buck you put in there, you only get about 55 cents to 63 cents of ancillary economic activity out of it. But just think, if we capture those 3 big bins of demand, walkable communities, regenerative agriculture, and productivity revolution, we point at the highest end of the spectrum, ranging from manufacturing, number 1. Every buck you put in, you get $1.35. Number 2, believe it or not, is agriculture. You get $1.20 out of that. Number 3 is construction, 98 cents. And number 4 is transportation, 95 cents. Pretty cool. That's where the economy is driven. And that's where we've got to go. And that's why now at Case Western Reserve University, never even really heard of it, and then now I'm there. Pretty cool. Research University in Cleveland, of all places. And what we are designing out is to be able to capture that demand. And we is me and Patrick Doherty, Joel referenced. We're co-directors of a thing called Strategic Innovation Lab. Doesn't matter what those words are. I don't know what they meant, but that's the title they gave us, right? But what we are doing is building that framework for implementation. We actually got this stuff, this logic, from grant strategy we want to work on with Admiral Mullen to this type of framework. I'm going to talk about this framework in just a bit. But we actually got it to President Obama after he got reelected. There was a call out after he got reelected. There was a call out for big ideas. Well, they were thinking about mapping the brain, the human genome, those kind of stuff, the important stuff. But we said we can do grant strategy. We can do it this way. Well, the response we got was, well, meets our ambition, but exceeds our expectation. I.e., they didn't know what to do with it. So what they asked us to do is, we need three things. Number one, you need to take the content of this thing to a 2.0 level, take it deeper. Number two, you need to build a constituency because holy shit, we're going to get our asses kicked if we go forward with something like this. Number three is you got to come up with an implementation plan. And so we said, okay. So that's what we're doing. And this is what this implementation plan looks like. This is just how we're getting started. And I can't remember, I think it was it Steve Hansen that said just something about, you're here, right? Raise your hand. And you say something like just jump in or don't be, just don't be afraid to fail. Whatever the hell you said, you were actually spot on. So that's what we're doing.
F, do it.
Yeah, just F.
JFDI.
Just JFDI. Okay. Fricking, thank you. I almost said it, I had a choke on for a second. All right, that's what we're doing. In a top-down, bottom-up framework. Anybody know Lester Brown work? Yeah. Well, this is his sandwich technique right here. It's a pretty smart cookie. So, we're copying from him. So I had to give him a shout out for it. Top-down, bottom-up. Starting with the economy. So we're going to take this economic logic and we're going to bring in 100 top-tier CEOs. Yeah, CEOs. Along with 30 folks, subject matter experts and civil society leaders, and put them in a room and figure out the 2.0 level of this economic logic. And come out with the big ticket policies that we need to do to get this economic engine running. And we're going to deliver to the 45th president, whoever he or she is, within the first 100 days. That's our goal, that's what we're going to do, and that's what we're doing right now. So we'll see how that goes. But the other part is the bottom-up piece. Because nothing's real until it becomes real. You can't just live in Wonderland, and you guys know that. So what we're doing is taking a page from Michael Porter's work around regional clusters out of Harvard, where he talks about industrial sectors, where we said, bullshit, you got to put sustainability as the organizing logic. Not making better widgets, but making better societies and running an economy that makes sense for our 21st century reality. And we're actually putting them on the ground. We're working on these for a couple of years. And there's 4 in play right now, 2 that are actually really working, and 2 other ones I consider plates that I'm spinning on a stick. But the two that are spinning on the stick are one in the southeast. It's just the politics are hard. Sorry, that's the reason. All right, it basically runs from Charlotte down to Atlanta. But we get some good guys on our team, like Senator Nunn gets it. He can not only think on that scale, but he understands the inside game. So that one's way in the back burner. The other one that's in the back burner is the upper Midwest, basically from Minneapolis to Milwaukee. But they've got their own thing going, and they're cranking it up. A Great Lakes Design Lab coming up out of the University of Minnesota to tie into what we're doing, the Strategic Innovation Lab. So we're doing this kind of stuff. The second one is Mid-America Prosperity and Security Cluster that runs from West Lafayette, Purdue, down to northern Kentucky. All right? And the fourth one is what we're calling the Lake Erie Crescent. It runs basically from Detroit to Youngstown, Ohio. All right? So what do all these things mean? What are we trying to do? I'm going to talk about it in a second. What we're trying to do is prove the efficacy of this concept of full spectrum sustainability on Main Street, USA. Where we're going to integrate the functional sectors of food, water, energy, built environment, transportation, education, industry, together into a different type of framework, a different type of economy. And, oh, by the way, figure out the financing mechanisms to make it happen. And just so you know, I'm not bullshitting you, we're working with Cuyahoga County in Cleveland, and we're just launching a clean energy finance hub, just to cut our teeth on it, on how do you create the capital stack, private sector capital, coming into very complex deals to make it real. So it's not grant money, it's not flash in the pan money. It's enduring market value money. And another thing that Steve said, public value. If you can demonstrate the public value, if you can capture that value, and you can articulate that value, then you can monetize it, you can securitize it, and therefore you can invest in it. And that's what we're proving out. And that's why, oh, by the way, I forgot to mention, The Strategic Innovation Lab is at the business school at Case Western. It's nowhere else because it's a fundamentally business proposition. And so what's the design? Well, sorry, Joel, but Joel's younger brother here, you know this guy? His name is Sir Ebenezer Howard. He came up with this idea in 1902 called Garden City. I mean, you're going to have to design to this end. I mean, there's no magic elf on a moonbeam that just comes down and obviously makes it happen. I mean, you're going to have to design. And he came up with this notion of a garden city. It's cool design. Just like I said, multiple sectors of any society are here. A couple of things I just want to point out. He's got a transportation system. He's got sources of water, food, industry, education, all there. What's even cooler, you can't read it, I know, but he's got a home for inebriates. He's got an insane asylum up there. He's got it all figured out how you're going to recruit Marines. I mean, this is cool. This is awesome stuff. He's got it all right there. And we took this type of model and we just dusted it off, and that's how we came up with this notion of full spectrum sustainability. And how do you figure out the financing to make the synergies work? So as my friend David Orr says, that 2 + 2 = 22. It doesn't equal 4 anymore. We have to start thinking in a systemic fashion and building real structures, particularly financial structures, to deal with systems that we need to see come together and come to play. Because without the financing juice, it doesn't make it real. All right? Now, going through all this stuff, I mean, it's tricky when I started with the Pentagon, and then, you know, that was interesting enough, but it's still going to this day. I'm often accused of being utopian. Now, yeah, you know it. Now, as a Marine, you know, we kind of live in a pragmatic world, you know. And so when you get called utopian, I mean, that's like, you know, I don't know, it's like calling your mom a bad name. You get pretty pissed off. You know? And so, you know, if I got my ass, I looked up a word. You know, and I said, but that's not that bad. You know, if you learn about utopia, you do an etymological drill on it, you know, it's, you know, core, you know, the stem that comes from Greek, utopus, place, you know. And they have the U part, right? You can spell U in 2 different ways. You can have an O-utopus, or you can have an E-utopus. Right? Well, in Greek, the O-utopus means no place. The E-utopus means good place. Which one do you freaking want? I know which one I want. I mean, it's a fundamental choice. And oh, by the way, it's our choice. Unfortunately, it's not her choice. And I'm stealing this imagery from my friend Bob Bergabaugh, because I love this question and I hate it at the same time because it haunts me. What is she going to see in the year 2020, 5 years from now, that year of perfect vision? What is she going to see? Well, she's going to see what either we do or what we don't do. Right? We have a choice. She doesn't have a choice. And if talking about this and trying to figure out a new design, pulling a Buckminster Fuller, not worrying about where the current system is, because I don't have the time to waste on it, but creating a new system, a different system that will compete on a level playing ground to make that happen, now we're talking about something. And if that's utopian, well then, call me guilty, because I'm willing to bet that these cats that came up with this document were a little bit utopian in nature. And those are the first freaking words on that piece of paper are. It says, we the people of the United States. It doesn't say waiting on Washington. You guys know that better than anybody else. It says, we the people of the United States, in order to form a more perfect union, establish justice, ensure domestic tranquility, provide for the common defense, promote the general welfare, and most importantly, to secure the blessings and liberty to ourselves and our posterity. Posterity, that little girl, my 14-year-old son, your kids, your grandkids. Yeah, if that's utopian, I'm in. And I also just want to remember that my fellow Minnesotan, Hubert Humphrey, reminded us that those words in the preamble, not only do they articulate the perennial purpose of this nation, they also articulate the promise of this nation, but they also articulate our obligation to this nation. Because those words are action words. To form, establish, ensure, provide, promote, secure. There's never going to be an end to tending to these words. And our duty as citizens of a republic, of a government of the people, by the people, for the people, to tend to those. And here's the other groovy thing about sustainability. We're never going to get there. Get your minds around that. Sustainability is not an end state. It's a condition that we're constantly going to have to strive for. That's what makes it grand strategy. We'll never get there. We're going to have to adapt. We're going to have to evolve. We're going to have to be flexible. And that's what makes grant strategy powerful. That's the way we've done it in the past. That's where we can take opportunity and shift the direction of this country. And oh, by the way, I can think of no other cause for America that subscribes to the best and the finest traditions of this nation. I can't think of anything more worthy that I can look my wife and my son in the face and say, yeah, I'm going to be part of that. I'm going to put my skin in the game and go where the meat meets the metal to make something happen. And oh, by the way, when we take this cause of sustainability, put it on our very capable shoulders, not only as a nation, but as citizens, well then, not just in a partial measure, but in a complete measure, we truly will be taking on the cause of all mankind. Thank you.
Wow. And I've heard this before. I still get blown away. I've told Puck this, that we actually come from sort of opposite directions. You know, I'm a Berkeley lefty. I came of age during Vietnam. I knew that I was going to become a conscientious objector that when I registered with the Selective Service System, and I was, you know, kind of ready to go north of the border if I had to. And I'm not someone who naturally wants to salute somebody, but you make me want to do that. But what's interesting is that we've come to this kind of same place. I mean, you've articulated it well beyond anything I'm able to do, but we both have come to this place of seeing this sustainability opportunity from two very different places. And that's why pretty much since we first met on stage, I've been all in. Let's talk about the local piece of this, because what you're doing, what you and Patrick are doing in Great Lakes and various places, Hickory Crescent, is really interesting, and I think it's very relevant to this conversation that's taking place here this weekend. Give us a taste of what, pick one of the clusters, pick the Lake Erie cluster. That's probably in some ways the most evolved. But what's, first of all, the role of local government in that?
I should have made this clear, but I guess I was levitating or something. But when we look at the reason why we're going to, and I'll get to the question, but I got to kind of get to it in a roundabout way, is when I retired from the Marine Corps in 2011, I was at the Pentagon, and it was just clear that nothing was going to happen in DC. And I don't mean to stick to the man or anything. It's just reality. You know, the strategic muscles have atrophied to such an extent there's just no capacity. I just want to make the point is that here Admiral Mullen had us do this. At the time, President Obama was still really riding, hyper energized this idea that change is coming. Secretary Clinton, Secretary Gates, these were probably the four most influential people at the time. This is 2009. They actually had the same worldview. They actually liked each other. And still, we couldn't, and they all got briefed on what we were doing. They all liked it. And we still couldn't get anything freaking done. It just was maddening to me. So we retired in 2011 with a firm belief that the only way we're going to change the ship is if the private sector leans in at the macro level, federal level. But at the bottom-up piece, the key players were going to be municipal level governments, mayors, county council members. Because again, what I said before, I meant that, is that you got to deliver. You got to look people in the eye and you have to freaking deliver. And it's hard, I get that, but you have to deliver. And so that is where we're hitting. What was the question again? Oh yeah, so, how do they play? Yes. So how do they play? I'll have to say it depends. So in Detroit, so Lake Erie Crescent, yes, we're going, part of the drug deal of going to Case Western was they had to narrow and deep on the Lake Erie Crescent. Said, okay, so let's get this one really off and going. So Detroit, number one, definitely the city level government, but it was a tough sell initially
to have them recognize they couldn't fix Detroit within the context of Detroit. They had to fix themselves within a broader span. So now we're talking about, or within a broader framework, a regional framework, that cross state lines. Because we looked at where do the economic systems flow, not where the state lines were and what their policy making, their current apparatus, where they had to start thinking about different ways of doing policy. Same thing on the Ohio side. So we hit, to get really detailed, got down to Cuyahoga County. They were doing some pretty interesting things. Number one, first county, as far as I can figure out, first county to take on social impact policy. They're going to use it for affordable housing and try to bring in that mixed use, mixed income flavor to the redevelopment of Cleveland. Pretty interesting. Using social impact bonds as a financing mechanism. The second thing was around the energy framework. Was would they be willing to put skin in the game to hire a contractor, pay the money for pre-development work, to have them be the pros from Dover to figure out complex deals and bring private sector money in. A true public-private partnership that didn't suck money out of the public coffers, other than to do the pre-development work. So it's basically done on the structure of the deal, the soundness of the deal, and the ability to generate jobs, tax base, energy, all these types of things. Now you got to go toe-to-toe with the utilities, but they're willing to do that kind of stuff because they recognize the current situation in town. Pretty cool thing.
So I want to try and get a little more granular ground level here. I know it's late, but we'll give you, Kate, someone give us a high sign when we need to. First of all, we want to talk a little bit here, but we want to bring you into this conversation. Did you have a meeting of local electeds or regional?
I just went over there. I just figured out the whole thing. I mean, the one thing I did learn that done in the Marine Corps, and particularly at Special Ops Command, is that it's all about relationships. So you just gotta sniff around and just start figuring out who's who in the zoo, and then just start pulsing in the right place. And so just figured out the right, specifically for Cuyahoga County, Sonny Simon, representative in Cuyahoga County. Knew she was amenable to this type of stuff and had a reputation for wanting to do things. And so
it's finding a friendly and building around.
Yeah,
for
and also just, I mean, I think it was mentioned earlier, but we've all got to realize we're at a Wittgenstein moment, you know, the track this, where you got to ladder language, you got to kick it away. I can't go in there talking on what I want her to do. I need to talk to her about what I can do for her and just frame it out. So it was, I guess a lot of it is selling stone soup, admittedly, but you just got to get your foot in the door, and then things start happening, and just finding the allies, have them start speaking in their words, telling your message in their words, and not get worried about you got that part wrong.
So let's take the next episode. Telling your message in their words to whom, and what's the constituency that they build?
Their constituency first of all, Sonny built was within Cuyahoga County Council, and then at the same time, I'm working on the inside of Kate. Well, just to step back to show you what the kind of the practical aspects of it is, to get things going. What we did is kind of doing, read Chairman Mao's Guerrilla Warfare. It's got great stuff. Teach you how to do some of these things. So inside of Case Western, a very bureaucratic, academic, wow, I thought the Pentagon was slow. These people are slow, but very risk averse. So just figured out, okay, what were they doing? What were they investing in already? Well, there were three things that they're already investing in: energy, food, and some built environment, infrastructure stuff. And so I just started sniffing around, okay, what would map up? Well, the first lowest hanging fruit was $21 million in energy efficiency upgrades that the university was going to do. So go back over to Cuyahoga County saying, hey, what happens if you start up the financing for that? Well, we could probably do something like that. Okay, so clean energy hub, sounds good. Back to Case Western. Hey, you got this portfolio. How are you guys going to pay for it? You came up with 2012, it's 2015. You haven't done jack all. What are you going to do? Well, we're working on it. So how about this? So just kind of just weaving them together, and then they figure it out.
But this is a slog what you're engaging in.
Yeah.
In terms of it's hand-to-hand, kind of better than I do. How hard that is and how long that takes. How does this scale?
Well, it scales by, I don't know, but to Steve's point, it's freaking trying. If we can cut our teeth on this financing tool, just on the energy efficiency stuff, well, financing is agnostic to sector. So then the natural thing is the food, water, energy nexus let's graduate to that within Cleveland, and then we migrate that. So we're already laying the groundwork up in Detroit to do the similar type of financing models up in Detroit. So we have Detroit Future City, which is in contract with the city of Detroit, got them on our side. Didn't go to the government because they're risk averse, but Detroit Future City is being funded by Kresge Foundation, so they have a less risk, they have a higher pain threshold, risk pain threshold. So they are now becoming our advocates. So now we'll migrate the financing there. And so now we have two major nodes in the Lake Erie Crescent that will migrate to then Toledo, to Youngstown, et cetera, et cetera. So it's kind of, that's the theory. We'll see how it works out.
And is the hope that this, I guess the hope that this takes off a life of its own, that you start to begin to get a constituency that sees this and takes it in some vision of what you're talking about. It may or may not be your exact vision.
It doesn't, I mean, it's just the point of getting started. So we think we figured out the financing mechanisms, but then the answer is, okay, well, who's going to do what, who's going to pay? Well, who's going to do what? We're hitting at major institutions. So first of all, it's that whole eds and meds, but also sports teams, professional sports teams.
Let's talk about that. That's not obvious.
Okay, well, it is, we already know that the universities have to buy food, they have to, do energy, and they all want to do the sustainable stuff. Okay, so they're spending, so we're not telling them they have to spend any more money. We're just talking about reprogramming money, okay, around those things. And then we move over to the medical institutions, so like Cleveland Clinic, and they have stuff up in Detroit as well. And then we just migrate to them. The cool thing about the professional sports team, they don't have as much purchasing power, believe it or not, but what they do is they have ability to carry a message to a different segment of society, and that's really the important part where you can start spreading out. So in Cleveland, you have LeBron James and Kevin Love, the Cleveland Cavaliers, saying, yeah, this is absolutely important. And there are, and oh, by the way, Dan Gilbert, who owns the Cleveland Cavaliers, is the guy that's doing all the urban investment in downtown Detroit.
Quicken Loans.
Quicken Loans. So all we're doing is, all it did was lay out a systems map and then pick who I thought the best leverage points were, and that's where we're engaging.
So you're weaving this web with local government, academic institutions, the healthcare community, the sports community. Is that what it looks like? Is that what it takes in any of these regions?
I think that's just the thing we're using to get started. And our goal was to have, we just got there in a case. And our goal was by this summer have at least something on the table that deals cut. And hopefully it's going to be this $21 million. So we're right in the process of doing that. Even if it's $3 million, I'll take it just to get started. But the whole idea is that we hit these basic points, but we want to be able to do a more inclusive process that gets more functional sectors. So, for example, Ford, you were talking about mobility earlier, so now we're talking to Ford through, I guess he's not here anymore, but University of Michigan has their everyone's got a SMART program. Sue Selinsky is leading, it's all about multimodal transportation and mobility. They're consulting Ford to transition Ford from being a car making company to being a mobility service provider. So that's why we are engaged with Ford, because that would be a huge, huge impact across that region. And that's how we think we can grow.
So I could keep asking Henry to do it kinds of questions for the next 45 minutes or so, but love to get questions from you all in terms of, there's a mic, I don't know if this is it, or someone can run it around, or whether we even need the mic, or just Jake here is
I can do that, so that's
here, I have to separate that. But in terms of what, as you see this on the ground in your cities and counties, what's the opportunity and how would this work, or what challenge? Why would it not work?
Go ahead.
Hi, I'm not a local elected official. I'm Jenny Casson from Cutting Edge Capital. John Katovich is a friend of yours, my business partner. And I'm wondering about the financing piece. Right now we have $30 trillion tied up in Wall Street. And some of the legal rules and limitations make it difficult for everyday people to invest in their own communities. I'm wondering if that's something you've looked at.
Well, yes, and so again, an example of Lake Erie, which is a bit deeper, is Key Bank. Key Bank is a local regional bank, and they have already made the overt policy decision, if they, as an institution, that they want to be investing in these types of things. So that was an easy way to go. In terms of Wall Street, not worried about Wall Street, because Wall Street does what it is, what it does. It'll eventually come around. I mean, we've talked to folks like J.P. Morgan, who
Yeah, you know, in
BlackRock.
and BlackRock more importantly because of Larry Fink's recommendation and how they came out of 2008. Bottom line though is we've got to be able to show that this model works first before they'll dive in. So 2 years ago, we were talking with JP Morgan about standing up $1 billion Patriot Fund. This is a pilot project, but we have to be able to cut our teeth and show something here. So I'm not sure if I answered your question. I'm just not too worried about Wall Street getting it at this point because we haven't even engaged the federal government yet, and I think that's where the big push is going to have to come. So keeping it local and regional because people have a DNA connected there and use local regional financing and capital to make it work. Did that answer your question?
I'm actually talking about regular folks who just have their money tied up in retirement, who often
Yeah.
don't have the option to invest in things in their own community.
I can't talk specific about it because we haven't got to that level yet. However, part of this idea, and I didn't get out into the guts of the regional cluster logic, but what we also want to be able to do is be able to have people invest their 401ks, their money, whatever they're putting their money, that they can invest where they are. So they have skin in the game. That's a key logic to it. And again, that's why we're going to key bank because that will give us mechanisms to be able to do that. But we haven't gone down to the tactics of doing that yet, other than that's where we know we want to go.
I want to ask the same question that I asked earlier today, but I think maybe you can have the answer that I couldn't get earlier.
Could you identify yourself?
I'm Woody Friday from Winters, California, on the city council there. American ingenuity. There's nothing that American ingenuity can't solve, and we have the resolve to solve any problem as long as we have the collective understanding that it is a problem and we all agree about it. Recently, the Department of Defense identified global warming as our greatest threat to national security. And yet we have approximately half of the people in the United States who don't think that's a problem, that carbon emissions are not something that we need to deal with. How do you talk to and how do you deal with? How do you convince people who don't understand that global warming is a problem?
Yeah, I don't. Is the flippant answer. I just don't because I just don't believe that climate change. If you can't look at science and that, you know, Mykleby is, I'm not going to convince you. However, the thing that we're talking about here is, taking the systems approach. Instead of taking climate change head on, and this is again strategy 101, it's the indirect approach. So we started gating systems of reducing carbon intensity and how we grow our food and how we manufacture goods, how we move our butts from point A to point B. It's still getting the same effect, whether they believe it or not. And guarantee you, those people that are that have get a sweaty lip over climate change, they're going to be fired up about the economic opportunity. And whether they know it or not, they're going to be part of that system. I mean, that's the logic. And if I don't know if that's a good answer, but that's the approach we're taking because the fight over climate change, holy shit! I mean, I can't do anything about climate change. What I can do is about the systems that are producing the deleterious effect of climate change. So I'm going to focus on the system, and hopefully that will address the bigger problem.
Question over here.
Yeah, thank you. I'm very impressed with you, very impressed with what you said. I actually would like you to run for president of the United States. Now I understand, yeah, well, seriously, we all thought that at one time too, but we have you've said you're going to put a plan together, you're going to hand it to the next president. But we really need leadership. I mean, you've acknowledged what we endure here in this room, trying to move things at the local level. But the truth is that we don't hear people at the federal level or even at the state level speaking about any of these things in the integrated way that you have. And that's a talent. I don't want you to, necessarily dismiss my suggestion right out of hand. Because this is a time in America when, frankly, the Democrats are sick and tired of their own party, the Republicans are sick and tired of their own party. We're sick and tired of the conversation being about what we don't like about the other party, and nobody talking about what the issues are that are really affecting our communities. And it's a painful feeling, because we just inherently know this is a losing proposition, and we're just watching things go. So, I don't know, you seem to have a good network. I really strongly encourage you to get a TED Talk out right away, and let's make a movement out of this, because you've made more sense in the last hour and a half than just about anybody I've heard on C-SPAN in the last 5 years.
I'm sick of them too. But thank you.
Well, one of the interesting things is that I've known Mark for a couple of years now, and I don't even know which way he votes. I've never asked him, and I'm not going to ask him now. And yeah, well, that's exactly right. It doesn't really matter.
I'm an independent. My dog's name is Independence. Awesome dog.
All right. Well, you do have a dog in this fight, then.
Yeah, yes, I do.
Martha Davis with the Inland Empire Utilities Agency down in Southern California. I'm curious about this question that was asked about the climate change. I get the untouchability of in certain political sectors, and yet we've had states and regions that have been so dramatically impacted by the change in weather patterns, which seems to me an entry point for the discussion that you're having, because they have to rebuild their infrastructure. And the question in front of them is, do they do the same, or do they do it differently? To what extent has that impacted the way you think about this?
Yeah, I got to show you something real quick. Yeah. But I mean, just first of all, I think if we just take a numbers approach, I mean, I'm not much of a numbers guy. I'm kind of more intuitive than I am analytical, quite frankly. But numbers have their role. So first of all, just based on sprawl alone, we're spending over $1 trillion a year just in wasted money, whether it's infrastructure, whether it's in the energy cost, lost productivity in the car. Oops, I'm sorry. But to your point, I mean, how do you get a message to? By the way, you guys are doing awesome. I want to talk to you about that maybe. But can you name this is the kind of story we're going to tell, and I think a Marine can tell this kind of story. Because can anybody name these places? Like the top one? Well, the top one is Gaza, right?
Beirut.
Well, Fallujah, Kansas. Greenberg, Kansas. Can you tell the difference between any of these urban environments? Now, Greensburg, Kansas is an incredible story because the politics were they denied climate change. Before the event. Post-event, guess what? They've rebuilt their town to be completely sustainable. It's powered by wind. The thing that knocked their town down is now powering their town. That's a powerful story. In the middle of Kansas, in the middle of corn country. And I just want to put this at a scale. Casualty rates. Right? Now, I mean, in the urban environments here, like Fallujah, et cetera, I mean, those are civilian casualty rates. Obviously, loss of human life is higher, but when you strap on a uniform and carry a gun, that's part of the gig, right? But here, this is what Mother Nature doesn't have rules of engagement. She doesn't give a shit about it, And that's a story, to me, that's a story I got to tell. That's a story that's saying right now, Beaufort, South Carolina, again, politics don't work. But Beaufort, South Carolina is 28 feet above sea level. They can point to the houses that are going to be underwater here probably, in the next 30 years? That is a dramatic thing. You start talking in those terms and you just start showing the numbers, but it's really put down, instead of this global climate change, you put it, Beaufort, South Carolina, you, my neighbor, are going to be underwater in 30 years. That's a different conversation. You better bring it down to hometown in a real tangible way. That's the language that we need to use.
But you're also saying in here that it's going to take a hurricane, it's going to take a flood, it's going to take loss of life.
Yes.
It's going to take $1 billion, Katrinas.
We don't have a capacity as a nation, for whatever reason, this slow speed, high mass thing that's coming our way, to digest it. So I think our job is to put it into a digestible form. And unfortunately, some of that's going to be real events like Greensburg. Some of them are going to be vision casting, and using data to tell that story, but telling a story in a way that's not wonky, but it's based on, I live on 6th Prescient Avenue. I'm talking about a story that's going to happen on 12 Hyatt Avenue, right around the corner from my house. I don't plan on living in my house. I don't think it's going to be there.
Well, who's doing this well? Who's telling this story to their neighbors at the local level in a way that people sort of get it and say, go have a holy shit moment?
I don't. No.
So it's not, I mean, that's
I mean, that's
part of the leadership.
Yeah, that's part of that is part of the leadership conversation. But I mean, the ability to go into Hilton Head, again, this you guys were a friendly crowd. That wasn't a friendly crowd. You know, and I admittedly played my Marine punk card, and sometimes you got to do that. You know, just to be able to get their attention and say, listen up, what part of this don't you get? You know, and and hit them where they are. And trust me, a lot of crossed arms and a lot of, a lot of grumpy faces, but it gets them thinking.
Microphone down here.
A question on financing, in the event that some of us might like to think we can cobble together local financing to do some major projects. Did you find that you had to alter the financial terms, return on investment, and other characteristics of the loans that you're cobbling together in any of the arrangements?
But it's good.
Or are they competitive? Are they?
No. It depends. I mean, are you going to be able to? It depends deal by deal.
Okay.
So this is the interesting part, though. So just for the energy piece, the finances, the way they work. I don't know. Is this on camera? I'm not sure if Case Western wants me to say this, but it doesn't matter.
He's kidding.
It doesn't. They don't want to have the financing on their books. So they have this thing called MCCO, which is I don't know why they call it the Medical Center Company, which is actually the energy provider. Why they called it that, I don't know. But MCCO carries the financing on its books. But neither one of the parties actually has the chops to actually do the financing component of it. So that's why Cuyahoga County is saying, hey, we're going to hire this group. They'll make their money based on the private sector capital that comes in, so they get to pay a fee on service to do it. But they are going to create and tailor the terms that are amenable to each one of the groups that don't have the capacity to do that. So I don't know if that's answered your question, because I'm not a finance guy. But we're recognizing that the terms are going to be flexible and change because the deals are going to be different. And especially when we start doing cross-functional sector, where you start integrating food and energy, for example, together.
And a second part of that, have you found that the state governments who have, I guess, the greater power than the local counties to provide offsets, that is to really project 5, 10, 15 years out and say, we're going to recover a good deal of revenue based upon what we invest in or allow to be invested in up front?
Right, but the experience is, just specific to the Lake Erie Crescent, is that Michigan gets it more than Ohio at this stage.
And who's getting it? Is it governors? Is it legislators?
Yeah, this at the state level. At the
State government, executive, legislative branches, who's getting, who are you?
The specific office they're talking to is the Office of the Great Lakes, which is an office within the governor's office, state level government.
Hi, I'm Elizabeth Patterson and Mayor of the City of Benicia, which was once the capital of California. I just said that for you because you don't know California. We're a small city. My question really goes to what I think I heard you say, and I want to sort of preface it in terms of how much I appreciate what you're doing and the segments of the community that you're putting together. And you sort of acknowledge government and that there's a role for government and that the Washington part of the government seems to be pretty broken and local government seems to be working better. And in California, you made a comment about money sort of being agnostic. And I have a real problem with that because there is a concerted effort, comes out of a think tank down in Texas, to undo PERS, which is the retirement program that we have in California that is a public-run retirement program. It has its problems, it's made a few mistakes, but mostly it's a public investment and for public workers. And they have taken on social issues. And because of the position that they have taken, it has changed the world. And they are being attacked all the time. And other aspects about that kind of public sector investment. So I don't see the agnostic aspect about finance.
What I meant by agnostic is that we're financing doesn't care what functional sector is being applied or what project it is. I just meant that we're starting with clean energy, figuring out the financing tools for complex deals, and then we want to transition that to food, water, energy manufacturing, that type of stuff. So I think it was a little bit of apples and oranges. That's what I meant by agnostic.
He took the microwave, but just
But
as
here's
a
one.
just as a follow-up, is that, so that to me is a really important factor here, is that influence of the public investment sector, which goes along with Social Security, retirement programs, and all of that. And I think it's really important to emphasize that, because that in California has steered the ship in many ways. And I don't think that ignoring that, or not addressing that, not bringing them into your camp, I think that is an essential thing to reinforce.
Who's that you're saying that not bringing them?
Just the program that you have, the sort of the model that you're offering, be sure to bring that factor into the camp, because I think they're a real ally. And particularly where you're fighting, that's a pretty tough country.
Yeah, and admittedly, haven't got down into that level of granularity, just really trying to get something, a little bit of terraforming going. The complexity goes off the page, and this is where the role, I think, of the public sector has really got to be the honest brokers, you know. Private sector, I'll be honest, I still sometimes look, you know, you're in for making a buck, I got it. Public sector is going to have to be, that's why I think it's really effective at the municipal level of governance. I probably along maybe it's emotional, probably part emotion, part intuition, but you're living where you're working. You're living where you're governing. You know, that's an important part. But I know that's not an answer question. I need to learn from you. I'm serious.
There are some in California, CalPERS, CalSTRS, New York, Connecticut, a number of bodies of retirement systems that are enlightened, that are starting to have been deploying their, not just their capital, but their voting rights as shareholders to push companies along a whole range of issues around transparency, including some environmental issues, with varying levels of success, and their ability to take pieces of those earmark significant sums for clean energy, as CalPERS has done so reasonably effectively, and CalSTRS. So I think that is a huge pool of capital that is deployable at the right moment, but you just may not be there yet.
Right. Well, I mean, this is I just have to do an advertisement. We're at the Weatherhead School of Management. And I'm not sure if anybody's heard Dr. David Cooperize before, but he has a process called appreciative inquiry. It's basically bringing the system into the room. Incredibly inclusive process. I was skeptical about it until I saw it at work went to Albany, New York. He asked me to come and basically kind of do this. A bunch of public, private, civil sector folks coming together, trying to figure out a different type of economy for Tech Valley around the Albany regional area. I saw it happen. It was really unbelievable. And that's the process we're going to use once we just get a little bit of a foothold, get a safe spot that, hey, some of this stuff is working, and it's mostly to build the relationships and the partnerships. But we're going to bring that system in the room, and part of that is going to be labor is going to be represented. We're going to have the public financing, public government's going to be there, private sector is going to be there, so stakeholders there have a voice, and they actually get roll up their sleeves and make the process or design whatever the design is going to be. So it's not going to be my design, it's not going to be force-fed, it's going to have to truly come from the community itself. So if it's a charrette on steroids, it's a charrette on steroids, but who cares? If it works, it works. And if it doesn't work, well, then we'll figure out how to do it a different way. So
I think it's really important to understand that this is really early days in this project. I mean, it's really early days. They are figuring this out as it's being built, and we're writing a book about something that's being figured out as it's being built. And part of the goal is to have a plan for the president's first 100 days. And so there's a time, a ticking clock that is driving this forward. And I think so a lot of this is really going to start. It's going to take on regional flavors and local flavors as it gets deployed in different places. So.
And then the last, this regional cluster thing, by the way, is the third iteration. This is the third go because the first two didn't work. The first one was David Orr and I cooked up that we were going to use. Did everyone know David Orr by chance? Or
Oberlin University.
Yeah, just an unbelievable guy. Somebody just
gets things done. But our first thing was that we were going to do, create a National Sustainable Communities Coalition, the NSCC. And that was going to be 435 communities across the United States that were going to embrace this concept of full spectrum sustainability. Still use the same economic logic. 435. The reason why we picked 435 is because there's 435 congressional districts. And me coming out of the military, I recognize that the reason why defense contractors do so well is because they always have a vested interest in every congressional district. So what we're going to do is create a different economic model, and not saying that what currently is bad, but we're just going to create something that was different in some select communities, and just put our money where our mouth is and say, hey, is this better or not? And betting on the come that a majority of them would work better, that citizens would like them better, and then get that voice. 435 was a bridge too far. And then we tried a different iteration, and now we're here, and this is actually really taking off. So.
In the back. All right. Hey, Buck. It's Steve from Sacramento, but born in St. Paul, Minnesota.
Hey.
Hey. All right. So one of the things that's really clear is our default bias as a country shifted towards cars and sort of suburban development and all those things. What's the one thing that you think, as you look at it, and I have to say, I think that there's many ways to get to a sustainable world, and the way we talk about it in California probably doesn't work in other places, and the way we talk about it in coastal California doesn't work in rural California, and we have all those divides even in this state, even though we try to do our best to raise the floor here and really do well. But what's the one thing that we can do at the local level, in your opinion, to move the conversation forward? Is it making space for people who may not buy into a particular political perspective but want to get to the same end? Is it a particular policy? What would you think? What would you say is our one thing we need to be doing?
I don't know. I mean, one of the best advice I got before I took command of my fighter squadron was nobody knows how to command better than you do. Don't let anybody tell you how to command your squadron, and I think that's good. Nobody can tell you how to run your community better. But just from trying to do this stuff, the two things are, number one is financing, because at the end of the day, everyone loves the idea that the question is who pays. So you got to figure out the financing, and that's where I am right now, is that to get something real, figure out the financing. And leverage all the tools available possible, which may mean you have to stretch your brain about what is possible. The second thing is language, is be willing to, again, kick away your own language and meet people at where they are. So what do I mean by that? In South Carolina, if I ever say the word social equity, you're freaking dead in the water. You're going to forget about it. But if I say human capital development, holy shit, yeah, I'm all about that. Get the workforce going, yeah, educated workforce, yeah. Okay, human capital development is. It's the same freaking thing. Same effect. It's just you got to kick away your lighter language. But unsatisfying answer, but that's my answer. I do want to, I got to bring something up there because you brought up something, it's California, about California. I just found this incredibly cool. Today's, first of all, leading by example. I mean, you guys are already framed out into a regional approach, right? I mean, you guys already have a regional construct. I don't know how well that works for you or not, but I think that's smart. I mean, it works. New York finally went there. Governor Cuomo finally divided up New York into regional economic zones, which puts you guys well poised, just because of what you're doing right now, particularly with the Asian markets. I mean, this just geography alone puts you in a great position to be an example of smart growth at home as our smart power abroad. I mean, I think that's really cool. And oh, by the way, the numbers prove out that you got something going on right. I mean, this is good stuff. The thing I think is really cool is 7th largest economy in the world, but yet you're the 2nd in greenhouse gas emissions. I mean, 2nd lowest. I mean, you guys aren't cranking it out. And then number 1 is France. And why is France number 1? Freaking nuke power, right? So it really puts you number 1, right? Because it's really, that's kind of a skewed comparison, but pretty cool stuff. I did want to point out, though, you just got to, again, because flying around aircraft carriers when things are going really well is the time I was most scared.
because if things are going well, you know somebody's going to kick your ass. And so I don't know if these are good numbers or not, but these numbers are good. So why do I say position of the particle and momentum of the particle and Heisenberg's uncertainty principle? We tend to focus on our position, but the most important information is usually in the momentum because it has a connotation of the future, ties us to the future. Right now, your top 10 industrial clusters, I know you can't read it, remember that old graph up there? They're kind of pointed at that low end. Your top, the top 5 of your top 10 industry clusters in California are, the top one is hospitality and tourism, second one is retail, third one's healthcare services, then education, training, and knowledge creation, and then business services. And this is coming out of a report out of the Economic Employment Development Department or whatever, just this past year, in November 2014. So this is not meant to say, you guys are all screwed up. That's far from it. It's just that I wanted to throw that little bit, that burr under your saddle a little bit. Is that, man, things are going great. You guys have got the wind in your sails. Man, wouldn't it be cool just to accelerate into it?
Two quick things. First, longtime former staff member of Jane Harmon's. She's a remarkable woman. She's even more remarkable at the Woodrow Wilson Center, and I think she'd be touched that she got a shout out tonight. I got a simple question for you, maybe similar to what Beth said a few moments ago. Very plainly, how do we stay in each other's orbit? You have a remarkable way of synthesizing things, and I'd love to just stay in orbit to continue to learn from you. And certainly I think because our visions are quite shared, I'm sure we could also be supportive of you and what you're up to. And so what do you see in that?
Well, I mean, I'll make a drug deal with you. First of all, maybe learning from...
I'm in. Go.
Okay. I gotta learn from you guys because, I mean, I've never been in your shoes. So, I mean, and reading and talking to people for doing, so I'd love to have that recurring relationship. One of the other things I would ask is that whatever you're doing right now, if you could start talking about it in terms of a grand strategy. That what you're doing is, I mean, you guys are actually doing it. Is everything perfect? Hell no. We heard all the challenges around what still lies ahead, but at least you're moving in that direction. At least you have somebody that's actually talking about it. You guys are all talking, you're all doing it. So that would be my ask. I mean, what I hope to be able to do, what we intend to do, is as we move our work forward, particularly the macro stuff, is point to, I mean, having a marine point to California, I mean, quite frankly, from, like, if I'm sitting, again, talking about people in South Carolina, people go, yeah, that's California. You know, that's what they do. You know, they're in a different world. You guys are actually leading this nation. And I would love to be able to point to California and say, yeah, they would subscribe to this notion of grand strategy. I don't know how we get to that point, but I'm open. Trust me, I'll give you a card, and we just stay in contact.
And as the chair of the Local Government Commission, it gives me great pleasure to give you the LGC story, Local Government Commission, Environmental Sustainability, Social Equity, Economic Prosperity. Join us.
We have just a few more minutes, but I want to stick with it because I'm not sure that was entirely satisfying answer.
I don't think it did.
We have at least one more question.
Are you on Facebook or something?
Yeah, well, so here's an audience that wants to connect. They want to help. They want to be engaged. And so, what can you tell them? What can you ask of them? What do you offer them?
Well, I don't know. What I want to do is be able to maybe do this again and figure it out. I think it's cheap just to say, no offense. I mean, Facebook is bullshit. I subscribe to Tom Friedman's thing. Get out of Facebook and get in someone's face. Let's figure out how to get in someone's face. So I mean, I've got an email. I've got LinkedIn and Twitter and all that stuff that I really don't use. But what I would be interested in doing is getting this group into a room, rolling up our sleeves, and figuring out a regional cluster that we can say is attached to a grand strategy effort. And oh, by the way, that when we get this economic strategy task force going off, it's one of the pilot projects that gets pointed to the next president saying, this is what's happening there, this is what's happening in Ohio, this is what's happening in Indiana, this is what's happening in the upper Midwest. real tangible things that are happening, that have real constituencies, that are doing real things, that are making economic value, social value, environmental value, as well as being able to set up an example of what smart growth at home can be and how it can be smart power abroad. This is all George Kennan stuff. So I don't want to get off the wagon here, but if we want to sit down and plot out when we can meet together and do something real, well then I'm in. I just don't want to trade emails. I want to get down and get some fucking work done.
We'll get some fucking work done. But what I heard is a challenge and opportunity. Maybe it's an LGC project, maybe not, to map what's already taking place on the ground in California at the local level to the grand strategy and frame it in those ways.
Yeah, and you know what? That's perfect. Thanks for kicking me in the head there. This isn't an issue of really creating anything new. This is an issue of integration and aggregation. The Lake Erie Crescent, we're not doing anything, asking anybody to do anything new. We're just asking them, because there's so much great stuff going on, but it's all separate. It's all one-offs. What we're talking about is converging them. So, yeah, I would love it. If this is a point of contact, then let's do this. I got a piece of paper. Where did that go?
I've got even more stuff. But anyway, here you go. If you didn't get a package, here's the package. Here's the network list. Here we all are. Here they all are. And we're just about to form the chair, I'm about to form a strategic planning committee. We just decided that at our board meeting on Friday afternoon. Hey, Big Steve. Don't you think it'd be a good idea if we had the strategic action planning committee group to maybe meet with these dudes?
Only if he actually drops his Facebook crap, because he's got to get his message.
Sorry, I'm interrupting.
You're not going to...
All right, we'll take it to the bar after this. I'll take one or two more questions, and then...
Okay, Pat for Palo Alto City Council. I just want to return for a moment to this question about whether we have to give up on half the people in the country because of their phobia over acknowledging climate change. And I think one that a sustainable economy is a much more appealable vision than fear of climate change. And second, though, is that I actually think that a great deal of the opposition to acknowledging that reality is based upon a fear that it will have negative economic impacts and fear of uncertainty over this. And the model that you share is one with positive opportunity economically and greater certainty that can be framed. And I think that's an appealable message and one that I encourage you, don't give up on those guys in South Carolina. It's just we need to work on what is the message that will break through. And I think there is one.
Well, I mean, and thanks for that. The good news out of my shtick in Hilton Head was at the end of it, the majority of the crowd got it. And it was, and so the next step is, okay, what next? I think they were digesting the fact that I was telling them where they live is an economic disaster, that model doesn't work. They didn't like that, but I think they know that, and so we'll see where it goes. So I do think that not blunt language, just respectful language, that's not my point, but like just clear-eyed where we are. But to your point, is that but then articulating that here's a path forward, this is a way ahead, and then it gets down to how do you get people to change? Well, either lead, follow, or get out of the way, but it's happening.
So I think it's time to wrap up. Let me just ask one before I hand it back to Jake. I know you're excited to.
No. I'm just glad to.
When we meet back here for the Ronnie Conference 2017, 2 years from now, we just invited ourselves, but there'll be a new president. We just have come in about 60 days prior. You'll have a lot more ground under your feet. What's the story you want to be able to tell then?
I would like to be able to say, number one, there's a real serious effort at the macro policy stuff, i.e., let's get a freaking transportation bill that makes sense. Let's get an ag bill that makes sense. Energy bill that makes a comprehensive energy policy, but that has been framed out underneath a context, at least a serious grand strategy effort, similar to what Eisenhower did in 1953. That's what I want to be able to say. We're going to get there? I don't know. That's what we're trying for.
So that's the federal.
That's the federal level. From the bottom up, I want to be able to point to at least no less than 4 places in the United States at scale, at a regional scale as we're defining it, that are off and running as tangible examples. And if the federal policy isn't engaged there, what I would hope is that those regions, the region we're talking about here in California, is directly in contact with Shanghai and in a deep partnership on how to develop their systems, and that we have a partnership with Shanghai, that there's another partnership with Mumbai. That type of thing, so we show that smart power can be our smart growth here at home can be our smart power abroad. That would be my vision, and I don't think that is too aspirational at all. Doesn't mean the job's going to be done, because like I said, the job's never going to be done. But if we have that kind of real progress, and it's translated into real global connection, holy shit, we might have a shot.
Well, as the wise man said, let's just friggin' do it. Yeah. Thank you for your service. Thank you for your service.
Now, I want you guys to stay here. I want you guys to stay here. And let's see, this is live. I want somebody here to come up and join me. This guy's called Rick Cole.
I want to start with a story. Next year will be the 25th anniversary of this conference, and you won't have these kind of dialogues that you just heard tonight at the League of California Cities. God bless them, they have an important role, but the people who come here, the reason they come here is different. I came here in March of 1991. My community was deeply divided between pro-growthers and no-growthers. And given the quality of growth that we were seeing in my hometown, I was with the no-growthers. No more crap. I came here and I heard for the first time a vision of human scale, pedestrian-oriented, ultimately transit-oriented development. And the number of people who were converted to that were just about the number of people that could fit in that upper room of the Iwani Hotel in all of California, right? And Judy Corbett had the genius, the vision, and the luck to bring not only a bunch of visionary architects and planners and thinkers together, but to have them get together with practical officials who could go home and do this at home. And California is on a different trajectory because of that, which happened here 24 years ago. Smart growth, new urbanism, transit-oriented development. That map that Hassan Akrada put up, 1990, by the 60 years of no transit development, and what's happened since then, that started here. And so what we heard tonight is a powerful vision, and visions do drive change. But you have to do more than have a vision, and that's why the practical people in this room are so important to the success, not just in 2 years, but in 10 years, and 20 years, and 25 years. So that young lady that you showed her, what she'll see, hopefully she will not be seeing beheadings, and hopefully she'll be seeing a much brighter future. But I'm from a different generation than the millennials, and from my son Diego over here. I remember a guy named Arlo Guthrie, whose dad was Woody Guthrie, and who wrote This Land Is Your Land. He wrote a song called Alice's Restaurant. And the song isn't as important as one thing he said, because he was trying to get people to sing along with him. And he said, if you want to end war and stuff, you got to sing loud. And here's the point. We have to have a vision, we do have to articulate that vision. We have to inspire other people with that vision, and there's no better way to do that than by singing. And so we have a Marine here who's served our country as we serve our country. And it's an amazing country. He's right. Tom Paine was right. America's cause can be the world's cause. It hasn't always been. But on our best days, nobody's done it better. So, there's a song called America the Beautiful that most people know the first verse of it. Very few people know the fourth verse of it, but it was written for the local government commission. It goes, "Oh beautiful for patriots' dreams," quoting Tom Paine, "that sees beyond the years, thine alabaster cities gleam, undimmed by human tears." So let's stand up and sing the first and fourth verse of America the Beautiful. One thing the four of us have in common is that none of us are singers. So we're going to rely on the talent in the room to help us through this. Oh, beautiful for spacious skies, for amber waves of grain, for purple mountains, majesties above the fruited plains. America, America, God shed His grace on thee, and crown thy good with brotherhood, from sea to shining sea. Okay, here comes the LGC verse. Oh, beautiful for patriots' dreams that sees beyond the years, thine